Welcome everybody, and today we're taking a look at the Monster Mayhem collection that was released from Film Masters. Yeah, we briefly showed this off on a previous video where I talked about the label in a bit more depth, especially in terms of the films that I do own from them. Yeah, this was released earlier this month, April 2026, as of recording the video. And yeah, we're going to go in order of the films in terms of the disc, because they aren't in the same order as on the case itself, which I'll just briefly show you now. So as you can see, the first film we're going to be looking at is Giant from the Unknown. So this was released in 1958, and it's directed by Richard E. Cooner, who also does the second film on the first disc. He also did Missile to the Moon, and now all three of those films were released in 1958, so quite a busy year for him. And yeah, it's a science fiction horror film, clocking in at 78 minutes long. Stars the likes of Ed Kemmer, who was in Earth versus the Spider, which is a Burt I. Gordon released film. Also, Sally Fraser was also in Earth versus the Spider. She was also in It Conquered the World. You've also got Maurice Ancram, who I've seen in 21 other films, definitely the most prolific actor out of any of the films in this release. He was also in multiple other science fiction films like Invaders from Mars, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, The Giant Claw, Kronos, Beginning of the End, and Curse of the Faceless Man. Also stars Bob Steele, who I've seen in 11 other films. The only other sci-fi film I've seen from him is The Atomic Submarine. So Dr. Frederick Cleveland and his daughter Janet are joined by Wayne Brooks in the pursuit of artifacts from Vargas, a giant 500-year-old Spanish conquistador. However, Vargas has been resurrected by a lightning bolt from his mountain grave and goes on a killing spree. So although this lacks the spectacle and typical monster or alien that in most 1950s sci-fi films feature, I do somewhat respect it in terms of that latter aspect, as it makes for a nice change of pace. That said, even without much spectacle, the final act of this is rather entertaining, as there is a really rather decently sized body count, and the gradual build-up in the first half is decent enough. The cast is also good, it is generally engaging, the pacing is reasonable, the singular locale is well used, and it doesn't mess about in setting up the situation that the locals are facing, as soon as it starts, you've got a meeting of locals and they're all going on about murders and their farms being attacked and such. Yeah, it's really effective in that regard. I give this a 6 out of 5, a 6 out of 10, sorry, overall. Decent enough effort, but by no means the best film from that kind of period. And then also from 1958, we have Frankenstein's Daughter, so directed by by Richard E. Cooner once again. Whoopsie daisy. So yeah, this is once again a science fiction horror film, as you probably gathered from the title. Clocks in at 85 minutes long, so this is the longest film in the collection overall. And it stars like Sandra Knight, who I've not seen in anything in terms of sci-fi before, but she was in The Terror and Tower of London, the latter of which also saw Vincent Price. You've got John Ashley, who again I've not seen anything in terms of sci-fi before, but he was in Hood alongside, I think it was Paul Newman, and Savage Sisters. And finally got the likes of Felix Loca, who was also in Curse of the Faceless Man, so alongside Maurice Ancram. And so yeah, Dr. Frankenstein's insane grandson attempts to create horrible monsters in modern day LA. Yeah, production issues aside, chiefly the fact that it wasn't communicated to the makeup artist that the monster was supposed to be a woman, and ended looking nothing like the character the monster is created from. As our Dr. Frankenstein in this one, although he goes by the name of Dr. Frank to cover up his name, Oliver Frank, that is. He basically murders a woman to get the brain that he requires for his monster, but it wants to use a head as well. But ultimately, like I said, the makeup artist was never privy to the fact it was supposed to be a woman, so it quite clearly is the man that is playing the monster underneath all the makeup, and it looks like they've done the barest minimum job to make up for that fact by just putting some lipstick on part of his lips, and that is it. So yeah, that is a bit of an issue, but nonetheless, this is an overall entertaining effort. There is also more violence in this than the usual sci-fi effort from this period. For instance, one guy gets squished in between a pair of doors, and blood spurts out of his mouth, and one person also gets acid thrown in their face, and it's quite gory in that respect. So it's decent enough in that regard. The pacing is also on point. The effects are decent enough. The cast is good, and outside of some filler, it is predominantly engaging. Yeah, it gets another 6 out of 10. a lot of these films rarely get beyond that. Quite frankly, I have ranked a lot of the 1950s sci-fi films I have seen before, and yeah, very few are getting more than 3 out of 5. But you know, that's just the way it is sometimes. And then on the second disc, we have Monster from Green Hell. So I've seen both of the films on this second disc before. But yeah, it's from 1957. It's directed by Kenneth G. Crane, who also co-directed the film The Manster, which is a really rather decent sci-fi film, to be honest. And yeah, this is a science fiction monster film clocking in at 71 minutes long. Stars like Jim Davis, who was in El Dorado and The Parallax View, Robert Griffin, who was in Crime of Passion, and Joel Flewellen, who was in The Chase. Again, nothing in terms of sci-fi from those three actors, but nonetheless, the test rocket carrying wasps into outer space to study the effects on them of weightlessness and radiation, crashes out of control back to Earth into the jungles of Africa. The two astrobiologists in charge of the test mount an expedition to the continent to retrieve their experiment, only to find the wasps have grown to giant size, which are panicking all forms of life as they hunt for food. So, yeah, this is a film that has a far higher production than a lot of films from this period. In fact, it was $1 million, which is far and away higher than the previous two films combined by several times over, as I think Frankenstein's Daughter and Giant from the Unknown cost around $50,000, $60,000. So, not much at all in comparison to this. Which certainly helps it in some respect, as we do have some really rather sizable creatures that are superimposed onto some stock footage, mainly of animals running away, which is a little bit tiresome at times. But there is also a brief scene of stop motion animation as well, with one of the wasps attacking, I believe it's a snake. So yeah, it is decent in that respect, and its African setting certainly helps set it apart. Most of these sci-fi films, you know, are set in an urban environment. Giant from the Unknown actually isn't either, to be honest. It's set in more of a forest kind of area, but to be set on another continent and not in an urban area is really rather quite unique. It is also somewhat entertaining, features a decent cast, a good score, is overall engaging, doesn't outstay its welcome, and some of the effects are solid overall. But that said, the plot is predictable, it is cliche ridden, not particularly well paced, has an underwhelming conclusion, and though the setting is unique for a film of this type, it does limit the spectacle quite drastically. So, yeah, which is a bit of a shame, because even the likes of the Black Scorpion showed that you could do a more, you know, less Western focused film. You know, it is set in Mexico, but for the most part, it's in like, you know, countryside of Mexico. But even that showed you could do some spectacle if you had the money and the time, because that had a lot of stop motion animation. It even had a train scene in that where the Black Scorpion attacks the train and it crashes and such. So you can do something different with a decent sized budget, which that has. So I'm not entirely sure where that budget went, quite frankly. As like I said, outside of a brief bit of stop motion animation and some decent sized miniatures, it's yeah, there isn't much there. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's also relying a lot on stock footage of animals running away in a panic, and it superimposes these giant wasps onto that footage, which is evident and quite, yeah, underwhelming. And then fourth and finally, we have from 1957, the brain from Planet Arus. So this is directed by Nathan Duran, who I've seen 8 films from before. He's well versed in sci-fi films, particularly from the 50s, with the likes of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, 20 Million Miles to Earth, and The Deadly Mantis, all being released in that decade. And then in the subsequent decade, he also did First Men in the Moon. So First Men in the Moon and 20 Million Miles to Earth had the advantage of working with Ray Harryhausen, and yeah, that shows in terms of the effects on those films. But nonetheless, this is again a science fiction film, clocks in at 70 minutes long, stars John Agar, who was I've seen in 11 films before. He again, well versed in sci-fi from the 50s. He was in Tarantula, the first sequel to Creature of the Black Lagoon, The Revenge of the Creature, The Mole People, Attack of the Puppet People, and Invisible Invaders. You've also got likes of Joyce Meadows, who was in I Saw What You Did, and Robert Fuller, who was in the first sequel to The Magnificent Seven, Return of the Seven. So an evil alien brain, bent on world domination, takes over the body of an atomic scientist, while a good alien brain inhabits the body of the scientist's dog and waits for an opportunity to defeat the evil brain. He also has the help of the atomic scientist's wife and I think the wife's father or uncle or something. I've forgotten that aspect, to be honest. But nonetheless, this is an overall effective science fiction film which is despite its short length and the low budget production value, as it only cost $58,000. And those low production values will either charm you or make you laugh, but I overall find this to be an enjoyable effort. So the evil brain is, yeah, obvious in terms of how it's been done. It's effects that have been superimposed onto the film after the fact, so it's quite transparent at times. And they do look a little bit dopey in terms of their eyes. They look like they've had a few of the devil's lettuce, as you might well say, as you look really rather quite high at times. But yeah, overall, I do find them enjoyable regardless of that. And John Nagor is once again really good, while the way his eyes change when the alien brain commits a heinous act is really rather quite creepy. Obviously, it's been done with like contact lenses or something like that, but it does look really rather effective. The supporting cast is decent, the pacing is on point, the effects are fun even if they are janky, the score is well done, and it is predominantly engrossing. So yeah, that's going to be my favourite out of these four, 3.5 out of 5. All the other three have gotten 3 out of 5, which isn't, no, sorry. Giant from the Unknown and Frankenstein's Daughter got 3 out of 5, and Monster Freak from Green Hell gets a 2.5 out of 5. It's just not as good in terms of, its general plot. It feels a bit more sporadic, and yeah, despite having the highest production budget of all three, you could combine all three of the budgets of the other ones, and you still won't get close to Monster from Green Hell. It just doesn't use that budget well enough, quite frankly. So, yeah, but overall, it's still a collection that I really enjoy. I know that these kind of films aren't great, and I know plenty of people have fun laughing at them and such and such. The Mystery Science Theater, for instance, you know, made a whole show out of laughing at some of these kind of films. But I do, on the whole, like these films despite and because of their flaws. So, yeah, overall, a really, really enjoyable collection. And if you are well versed in 1950s sci-fi films, then and you do enjoy a lot of them, then you will get something out of these, I'm sure. So yeah, each well, we'll look at the booklet first that we get with this. So it's an 18-page booklet with a new essay by Tom Weaver. So we get the same mix of artwork on the front as the case itself. And yeah, it goes through all of the films. So you can see here the brain from Planet Earth. You can see one of the brains here. And you can see what I mean about them looking a little bit dopey, a little bit high in terms of the way those eyes look. But, it's still decent enough. And yeah, then you get the Vargos Conquistador from Giant from the Unknown. And then you get Frankenstein, the monster from Frankenstein's Daughter. So you can see it clearly does not look like a woman whatsoever. And then we also get the giant wasp from Monster from Green Hell. So yeah, there were obviously lots of normal insects or creatures and such that were gigantified, I guess you could say. Wasps being not one of the best though, to be honest. So yeah, but decent enough essay there from Tom Weaver, and it's a nice sized booklet regardless. And then in terms of the actual extras on the discs themselves, Frankenstein's Daughter has a full length commentary with Tom Weaver, as does Giant from the Unknown. You've also got a full length archival commentary track for Giant of the Unknown. Was it from the Unknown? It's misspelled it on the back. It says from the Unknown for the commentary, but then of the Unknown for the archival one. Don't know why. With actor Gary Crutcher, who yeah, didn't do much other films, to be honest. He did do write a few films in the 60s and 70s, but nothing I've seen. And then you've also got a Richard E. Cooner, filmmaker of the Unknown documentary. So that's all on the first disc. And then on the second one, you got a full-length commentary for Monster from Green Hell by Stefan R. Bissetti. And then for The Brain from Planet Earth, you got a full-length commentary by Tom Weaver and the Weaver Players. You've also got 3 featurettes on the second disc. You've got Missouri-born films of Jim Davis featurette, The Man Before the Brain, directed Nathan Duran featurette, and then The Man Behind the Brain, The World of Nathan Duran featurette as well. So yeah, all very good. All 4 films are in black and white, by the way, and they are all in the 1:85:1 aspect ratio. They've all got subtitles that you can use if you need them, and yeah, it's a region 3 Blu-ray collection as well, A, B, and C, and they all have DTS, I think 2.0 audio as well, which actually sounds fairly good in certain regards. So Yeah, overall, a really rather impressive collection. I want more of this kind of stuff, to be honest. Now, I do understand that some of these films have been released by the Film Detective before, which is another label that I don't think is around anymore. Um, as obviously we've already looked at that being the case with another version of Monster from Green Hell from them. I do believe Giant from the Unknown and maybe Frankenstein's Daughter has also had that treatment from them before. But regardless, getting all four films in this collection is far cheaper than seeking each individual film. That is, if the Brain from Planet Oros has had a release on its own before. I don't think it has. But if all four have been released separately before, it does work out far cheaper to get these as one collection rather than separately, as even with delivery all the way from America only cost about £31. So yeah, £31 for four films is really rather good, especially when you get a booklet and several extras per film. So yeah, on the whole, a really good collection, one that I highly recommend for anyone that is into their sci-fi films from the 50s, as I am. But if you're a little bit, new to the genre, I would say seek out the more well-known efforts first, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, Earth versus Flying Saucers and such beforehand. See if you can handle those kind of films outside of their positives, because even some of the best films from that period have their negatives. And then if you can deal with those negatives in those really rather great films, then yeah, move into the more lesser known stuff and see if you can handle them. Because at the end of the day, these aren't perfect. They have their issues. Some of the pacing can be a little bit off at times. There is a lot of talking at times as well between people and quite flatly shot scenes as well. So they aren't perfect by any means, but I do get a great deal of enjoyment out of them. For some reason, I can't quite put my finger on it, but yeah, maybe it's just the fact that they are quite simple and in terms of their plots and yeah, really rather quite kind of can I kind of say optimistic maybe, or sort of like kind of hopeful in terms of what science can achieve, and whether or not it goes wrong or not. They're not always, coming down on this side of, oh, science is bad. Yes, it might have been used for a bad reason, but it ultimately can have its positives. Maybe that's something that some reason why I do enjoy these films as much as I do. But regardless, they're just enjoyable. They're generally quite short, and yeah, they're very rarely so bad that yeah, I find them unwatchable. So yeah, but nonetheless, if you have seen either of these four films before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on them. Sorry for a little bit of a ramble there, but yeah, I do genuinely like these kind of films. That's why I bought so many from Film Masters before, as I showed off in that video earlier this week. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.